we're going to be recording, so just keep that in mind, as Erica said. As a general rule of courtesy, guys, if you can, mute your microphones. If you are not muting the microphones, I will be doing that during the presentation. Also, mute your cameras too, guys. That would be greatly appreciated. We do encourage questions. We hope you ask questions, so please do ask questions. We just ask that you ask them at the end of the presentation. So please save your questions that you have for the end of the presentation, and Donna and Tasha will be sure to answer them for you guys. In addition to their wonderful biographies that were provided in the beginning of the presentation, Donna Muñoz is an author of the well-known Farley books, and she's a great professor at El Paso Community College. Her name is Tasha Kreger. She's a great professor at Community College, El Paso Community College, and she's a freelance writer. She's an editor, communication specialist as well. They both have a very extensive background in education and experience related to publishing. So we really do hope you guys enjoy this presentation, as well as bring some questions with you guys at the end. And I'll turn it over to them, and thank you for coming, guys.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, thanks.
Can you see our screen? Our presentation?
Let's go to the...
Is it the many paths to publishing a book? Yes.
Yes, that's it.
Awesome.
All right. Alrighty, I will turn it over to Tasha.
All right. So you wrote a book. Congratulations. Yay! That is the first huge step. And you need to pat yourself on the back and just be really excited, because there are millions of people out there who want to write a book or who try to write a book, and getting to the end is such a big deal. So congratulations, and we're excited to have you along on this journey with us. So now that you've written the book, how to produce the best manuscript possible before you query the book. One of the things that you want to remember is that the querying process and the path to publishing is kind of the last step. So before you do that, you want to use your writer's resources to the max. We'll cover those a bit throughout the presentation, but that can be anything from using Grammarly.com as like a quick edit. It's not a perfect site, but it is something that will point out some of your grammatical errors. It can also be connecting with other writers locally and online. Almost every major city has writers groups, and you can also find them online. There's literally hundreds of thousands of writers groups, and so finding one that you mesh with is really important. These are the people who are going to keep motivating you. They're also going to be the ones that you can check in with. And you don't want to underestimate the value of a really good critique partner. A good critique partner isn't necessarily your best friend. It can be, but it is someone that you trust to give honest feedback. You want someone who is a reader and who values you and really is in your corner to help you succeed. So you've done that and you've completed your book. Then before you query it, it's really a good idea to get beta readers. Beta readers are different than critique partners. Critique partners go along with you. Critique partners will be a good sounding board, but the beta readers, which you want at least 3, but the beta readers are kind of your first audience of your book as a whole. They're going to be the ones who most likely haven't read the other drafts. You want them to have fresh eyes, and you want to be able to present your book to them, and they read it as if they have never heard the story. And so they can be kind of difficult to find, but with everything we're telling you right now during this session, the online sources are going to be your best friend. And so you can find groups that way. You can also find groups coming to sessions like this. The biggest thing you want from a beta reader is someone who is a good reader, which means they read a lot. It's also really, really helpful if you can find someone who reads the genre you're writing. They know the tropes, they know what is expected of your book before the story ever gets on the page. So that's going to be in that just a valuable resources are your critique partners and your beta readers. So you don't have to take everything they say, but just look for the consistencies. Look for if every single person who has read your work says something doesn't make sense to them, then try to figure out a way to say it in with different words or to present it in a different way. All right, let's see. Donna, will you go to the next slide?
Yeah. I'm like, it's not moving. There we go. Sorry about that.
Okay, so there are 3 basic paths to publishing. There's the agent, the publisher, and the self-publishing. If you were fortunate enough to go to the previous session with Mary Moore, she was fabulous, and she talked a lot about in depth about the agent process, and so agents, that's the most traditional way to go. Agents are your advocate. They'll go to the publishers and kind of present you and in the best light. The other reason agents are such a good and a very popular choice for authors is because the agents know which publishers to pitch to. Mary gave an image of throwing spaghetti against a wall and whatever sticks. When you query cold turkey, that's kind of what you're doing. You have some opportunity to research your publisher, but if you're querying a publisher, that's kind of what happens. Whereas an agent has a relationship with those publishers. They know a little bit more details on what they're looking for. So that might be why you go an agent route. Mm-hmm. Some people choose to forego the agent route for whatever reason, and so they might go directly to the publisher and query them. And we'll talk about what querying means a little bit later. And so if you go that route, you have to be aware that some publishers will not accept it, a manuscript that that does not have an agent attached to it, but many do. So your pool of publishers does go a little bit smaller, but there's still plenty out there. Again, Google and the web are going to be your best friends in this. Now, the third way to do it is self-publishing. And back in the day, self-publishing really had a bad rep. And that's because it doesn't require you to edit your books. Anyone can self-publish any book. But with more and more resources out there and more big authors who have then decided to go the self-publishing route, self-publishing has gotten a really viable option for some authors. Mm-hmm. And so the big thing about self-publishing that you need to remember is that it's going to be a lot more work on your part as an author, because as a self-publisher, you will do multiple jobs. You will be the agent, you will be the publisher, and a bunch of other things. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. And so let's go to the next slide.
Okay, so we're going to start off with talking about querying agents, and that's when you write up a letter to describe what your book is about. You've targeted a few agents that you'd like to reach out to. You're going to talk a little bit about who you are, and then you send off that letter. And here are the 4 things that you're going to supposedly pack, right, for your journey, according to award-winning former journalist Christy Belcamino. And that first one is perseverance, and that's huge. I've met writers who just sometimes get so frustrated with the rejections coming in that they just want to throw their manuscript away and just never touch it again. And it's very easy to feel that way. And I wish that I don't think this link is going to work. And I'm so technically afraid to try it. But this was a cute little meme of this mom eating a wrap and her baby was just starting solid foods. And it's just hilarious the way she was just trying to get just one bite of that wrap. and she just wouldn't give up. It was like over and over and over. And it was just the perfect image to capture that stubbornness that you need to have. You really do have to just have that ambition and thick sort of skin, and just know that the rejections, it's normal for those rejections to come in, sometimes multiple, in a week, in a month's time, sometimes on your birthday, you'll get a rejection, and somebody just made it live. So let's see if we can watch it. Thank you. Was that you, Tasha?
Yeah.
Thank
Magic.
you to our tech person. So cute.
She's so cute. That
She's
little
so
baby.
cute. I love her. She's just all about it. Like, she is not going to give up.
Oh, how cute.
Oh, so cute, right? So in case you were wondering, you as the writer are that baby, okay? And you just have to persist despite what you're seeing or feeling. Your emotions will definitely be up and down while you're in the querying process. Let me move this down a little bit. The second thing you're going to need is your work ethic. Cultivate a constant desire to improve as a writer. If you are not wanting to improve, that's just not displaying a good work ethic. Even now, as a published writer, I still have to read other authors' books, which I enjoy thoroughly, but I also learn from them, attending conferences, just, reading books on the craft, because it is a craft itself. And again, one of the best books I've read is Save the Cat Writes the Novel. And so, it was just life-changing. I used to just start writing a book and see where it went, but this was a really structured way of helping me not only learn and grow as a writer, but also organizing my thoughts, and it made the process a lot faster. And your work ethic doesn't necessarily just mean you're writing, right, hours and hours a day on your grand masterpiece, but again, it's reading other authors, learning the craft, developing your characters, seeing who they are, getting to know them first, writing that first paragraph and seeing where it takes you, outlining, scratching things out. So just really a lot of work goes into a book. I wish it was easier, but it's definitely not. And then, of course, we were talking earlier about being stubborn, but you also need that Teflon mentality. Sometimes we feel so proud of the work we've done and we're like, oh my gosh, they're going to love it so much. How can they say no? How can an agent turn this down, right? I've been putting in like the last 2 years writing this book, perfecting this book, and then you get this letter like, thank you so much. And sometimes it's not even like a heartfelt, personalized letter. It's a form rejection where it's just kind of like a copy and paste, right? And how are you going to handle these rejections, right? Especially because, again, they're coming at you all the time. And, some people just don't want to write anymore after they get, the but it's such a long process, and you just have to keeping your eye on the prize. Like, why do you do what you do? First of all, be in love with it, right? Getting that agent and maybe, following it to publication is just the topping or the icing on the cake.
Right. And number 4 is patience. This is one that new writers or new writers in the business, and even more experienced writers sometimes forget, is the rejection is really, really hard, but oftentimes you don't even get a rejection. And so the first level of the patience is to know that sometimes you're not getting a response at all, and sometimes they're just taking a really long time to respond. In the previous session, Mary mentioned that that agents will sometimes get, I think she said 50 queries a day to go through, and that takes them a really long time, which means their backlog can be enormous. And so you might send them something and they might even love it, but by the time they get to it, It's now 3 to 4 months down the road. And so, which is why agents will often close their doors to queries. A lot of times it's because they're going through their backlog, or their assistants are going through the backlog. There's other reasons as well, but that's one of the things. So that you need patience for that. You also need patience once you have an agent, once you have a publisher, because remember, with the agent, you're going to have to wait a bunch to see if you can get an agent. And then you're going to wait again and spend a lot of time hoping to get the publisher. And then once that happens, the publisher will read it. They send out, so you get it all done. It's still going to be a year plus before that book, even once it's been picked up by a publisher, before it gets printed. And the reason why is because it goes through rewrites, and they need artists, and there's all sorts of little details. And in the writing world, it just takes a little bit longer. You think that it's going to be quick. You think in the time of the internet that everything could go quick, but it just doesn't. And so you have to kind of change your expectation, and just step back and be excited that you're in there, but realize that even if you get picked up, even if you get on the agent path, it can be a year plus before that book is in the hands of all of the potential readers.
Right. And I would just like to add, even once you have secured a publisher or an agent, it still takes time for them to read your work. For example, I turned in a novel to my publisher in July, and she's reading other books as well. So mine is not necessarily going to jump or leapfrog up to the top. So it's been since July, and I have not heard back yet, we're in October. So, and there's nothing wrong or out of the ordinary about that. It really is normal in the publishing world for it to take that long.
Exactly. Okay, so if we've lowered your expectations a little bit, which is kind of important to do, we want you to be really aware of how this process is, so that you can be excited within the bounds of what that is. So once we've done that, how do I find an agent? I've said it before, and I'll probably say it 1,000 times in this presentation, but they're everywhere. It's online. That is going to be your best friend. You can try a Google search, agents for representing science fiction, or any genre that you have. The writersdigest.com is a really good one. They have a lot of information. Writers Digest has information on all aspects of the publishing and writing world. You can purchase the Guide to Literary Agents. There's a little picture of it for 2020 right there. But they update that online pretty regularly. Well, I don't know the schedule, but it's pretty regular. And then again, a conference like this, if you were at the previous session, Mary gave the option that even though she is closed to querying, that she'll accept anyone who saw her session. And that's pretty common from agents. I have a friend who his book was released last year, and then he has another book coming out next year, and he met his agent at a conference. They sat down and both ended up on a drink, or having a drink, and just started chatting, and that's how he made it. There's also the publishersweekly.com, which is another great tool. All right, next slide. All right, so how many agents should you query? This question is probably one of the number one questions to ask. Yet if you look online, there's a lot of conflicting answers. So I know I have my number, and that's it. That's it, 100 people. So I know Donna has something she wants to say about this, but real quickly, I remember when I first was told this, I was like, oh my God, all right, I'm just going to batch send everything out at once. Which is also not the way to do it, but
right.
Go ahead, Donna.
You're all 100 of them, send. First of all,
Perfect.
don't ever put all agents on 1-2 line, because they won't even read it. They will just hit the delete button because it just shows like a lack of work ethic on your end to put Mary and Writer's House and all these different ones on the two, the addressee. So never send a mass query letter, even though it's tempting at 100. My friend, her name is Darlene Campos. You may have heard of her. She's got a great career going for her. And this latest book, I just feel in my heart of hearts, it's just going to do so well. But she was so frustrated with her querying process for the center of the earth. And she'd get a rejection and she'd message me on Messenger, like just so brokenhearted. And that's another place where your writer friends come in, is like, when you are not able to hold yourself up, that's what we're going to do for you. And I want to say she got really close to this number, and it was just a constant me like reaffirming it's okay, because all those rejections are just getting you closer to the one, right? And she ended up securing Allison from Stimola. And Stimola is a great, huge agency, and they actually are responsible for the Hunger Games trilogy. So I was just so proud of her. I mean, just, that was amazing news for her. But this number can feel so draining. And I think I was already at about maybe 45 before I met Mary. And I actually connected with Mary through PitMad, which is a Twitter contest. And I'm so grateful for that, because it almost seemed like it sped up my process, because you pitch your elevator pitch on Twitter with the hashtag for the contest. The agents and editors who like it will go favorite it, and then you just individually go through and send them your stuff. So I had a turnaround of about, I would say, 2 to 3 days. I was agented after this contest, and we're going to talk more about that. But this really is a daunting number and can tend to like really affect people when they see it. But again, just all you can do is start from the beginning with query number 1. And you don't want to do all 100 at the same time. So maybe pick like 5 out of your dream list, or start a dream list of 20 and start off. And the reason why is because there's actually a game you sort of have to play, for lack of a better term or a key phrase, when you are sending out these queries, right? You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, which sounds so cliche, but it's also so true. Because if you're sending out a broken query letter that doesn't quite meet expectation, you just sent it out to like 40 agents. Now what do you do, right? If all 40 came back rejecting that query letter. So what you do is you want, if they have time, agents are very kind. They're also very busy. Sometimes you do get a form rejection, and sometimes you do get really helpful feedback. And I'm always so appreciative. I've had some of the sweetest rejections where I want to cry, but I'm so touched, like in my heart, like, wow, you took time to tell me how much you loved, the writing, but that it wasn't for you or whatever, right? There have been times when I've personalized a query letter and said something very thoughtful to the agent about like one of my favorite authors they represent or whatever, and then I get a form rejection, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, but they're busy. But if you do perchance get that feedback, you want to help that with your success rate. So you want to look at things like, are you getting form rejections, number 1, which is just like a quick bye, or are you getting more thoughtful responses? If you're getting full requests on sample pages, that means that both your query letter and your sample, your writing, are speaking for themselves, and the agent wants to read more. If you're getting a form rejection, you might want to go look into what your query letter is saying or what may have turned them off, right? And that would, again, be things like grammar mistakes, misspelling. I don't even want to say misspelling their name because they're not that rigid, but even just sending like 20 on the same 2 line. But you definitely don't want to send it in large batches, because you want to wait. And that, again, is that patience, right? That comes in, that mentality. You want to wait for these responses to come back so that you can employ what you're being told by the industry experts in order to make that query letter work. Okay, Tasha?
Okay, So the sample query letters to agents. You can, I'm not sure if this link is going to work through this, but you can look at it. You can just Google sample query letters to agents, and that'll give you a better understanding. But query letters can be modified to base on the agent's requirements. So every time you submit to an agent, they're going to have specific needs that they want. Almost always, they want to know how long your book is. I mean, it's kind of a golden rule. They want to know the genre. They want to know the title that you have, and what makes it different and unique. And then Mary pointed out in the earlier session, they want to know why you specifically are the person to write this story. There are no new stories out there. Every story has been told. It's just variations of different stories. And that's great because our perspectives are unique. So you telling that story is unique, even though it might be the same basic story that someone else has told. So you don't need to worry about that. That's not to say you should copy someone else's story, but you don't have to worry about that. Your unique perspective is important. And so you can base your query letter on what the agent is specifically asking. Sometimes with the query letter, they want a synopsis, or and if they do, then that means you don't need quite as much information in the query letter. A query letter really should only be about 1 page. There are different rules of thumb out there, but that kind of seems to be the one that everyone falls back on. And that's because Donna said it several times, I'll say it, agents are busy. They are so busy. And they really do want to get through as many story ideas as possible. And so getting a really well-crafted query letter is going to be a huge benefit for you. So you can so you want to be able to modify your query letter. And so the best, if you've never written a query letter before, go ahead and let's see if we can click that.
Okay.
I can't, but
I'm trying. I'm so sorry.
I know. It's, we're okay. So a query letter will have, I can tell you how it goes. I've written thousands of them. Or hundreds, not thousands, but so you want to have just like in a regular letter, you want to make sure you have your contact information in it, and you address it personally. There is almost no excuse not to address it personally. You also want to make sure you don't send a letter to one person addressed to someone else by mistake. Like if you change the who it's to, make sure you change it before you send it to the next person. And then you want to give, in the first paragraph, it should be an introduction, and then in the next one, the next paragraph, you're going to give, as Mary stated before, it's kind of like, it's the pitch, and it's kind of like the movie trailer of your book. And then how you know the agent, or your own accolades, that's going to be in your final paragraph, and then you conclude it. And so always make sure your contact information is in there. And so we're going to go ahead and pause since we don't have a query letter.
I have it. Do you see it? Do you see it on the screen or no? You don't?
I don't.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can, let me point a couple of things out real quick. Let me try this one. Can the audience see my screen?
Donna, we can see your PowerPoint, but you need to change what screen you're sharing.
Gotcha.
There you go. But we'll go ahead and open it to questions while Donna's doing that. Does anyone have any questions? We've got some more to cover in the slide, but about what we've covered so far.
How about now?
Nope, I still see your pretty face.
I'm sorry. Let me see. It's probably my internet. How about now?
There we go.
Yay, okay.
Okay. So the examples of the successful query letter, right? So this is a good resource because it will give you a copy of query letters that have been taken and that the agent has then said, yes, I want that book. And as you can see in the very first paragraph, the person, it has their name, dear so-and-so, dear agent that you want. And then you go ahead and you talk about your own novel and what it is. So it's a young adult novel. This book is called The Weight of the Sky, or the story is The Weight of the Sky. It's a young adult novel. It's complete. Nowadays, it's almost impossible to sell a story that's not complete. And so before you start querying people, you probably have a really good idea. And before you start querying them, you want to make sure that story is finished. And the reason why is there's the lagging middle, the sagging middle is kind of a thing. And some authors have a hard time finishing that. Just completing the novel is a big accomplishment, and it's really hard. And so many agents won't take a novel if it hasn't been completed. And so by this, the author of this query letter tells us that it's completed and tells us the word count. You don't want to try to sell a 400-page word count, or let's say a 900-page novel to a as a young adult novel. It's really difficult. You can try, but the agent needs to know that that's what they're going to be. That's the mountain that they're going to be climbing for you, because it is it doesn't follow the young adult rules. And so giving the information at the very beginning lets the agent know what to expect from the story. And then the next couple of paragraphs are the pitch for the story. It's kind of the elevator pitch, if you haven't heard that term before. An elevator pitch is if you were to ride in an elevator with someone that you could tell them your story. Thank you for highlighting that. You could tell them, the agent, your story in the time it takes you to get on an elevator and the time it takes you to get off an elevator. And so it's very quick. It gives you a glimpse into it. And then right after that, the author, Hannah, is giving a background on who they are and what makes them special. And every one of us has that. Sometimes it's hard to remember what it is if we don't have the traditional accolades, or if we haven't completed our degree, or if we haven't completed the things we think we need. But all of us have something out there that makes us unique and our experience unique. If you're writing a story and it happens to be on the border, hey, we're in El Paso, we've got a unique perspective, whether it's a border story or not, that gives you a perspective on interactions with other cultures. And so you just need to learn how to turn your experiences into ones that your audience will be able to share with you and they can identify. And so that's kind of what you need. So yeah, are there any questions about a sample query or how to do that? Erica has a question.
I do. So I know that your query letter that you showed us is a query letter for a novel. How different is it if it's like a children's book? Or is it the exact same?
So Donna actually wrote a children's book, and so I'll let her answer first because she has firsthand experience.
So I've only pitched romance and middle grade. But I self-published my children's books, but I do know that they still follow the same rules. And the only difference is that if you're pitching a novel, you have to look at what the agent is asking for in their criteria, which is on their webpage. So for example, a full novel, they may want to read the first 10 pages or the first 3 chapters, whereas in a picture book query, you would actually paste the whole story inside of the email, no attachments. So same rules apply. You can still connect with the agent at the beginning, like, I really enjoyed this book you represent, or, thank you for the advice you gave me the other day on Twitter, or the book recommendations, etc. But then you would still follow the same guidelines and then put that whole story in there. And then also let them know if you have other picture books as well, so that they know it's not just a one-time, look, I wrote this picture book. Like, you actually have a consistent repository of picture books that you've been working on.
And then at the very end, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm echoing. Then at the very end, you would still put in anything that would make you really good at writing picture books. If you have that, if you're a parent, if you took children's literature, if you attended a bazillion pediatric sociology classes, whatever it might be that sets you apart from Joe Schmo who is next to you, and sending a letter as well. That's always helpful.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a really good time to pause for questions. We still have to cover submitting directly to publishers as well as the self-publishing avenue. And we're at 3:38.
Right.
So we'll be glad to take any questions, and then we can wrap it up with the last few slides.
I have a question.
Yes.
I also want to say, you guys have honestly done a great job so far explaining the entire process, and you both have used real examples of what you encountered when you talked about perseverance. I was going to ask you questions on that, like your real encounters and maybe the rejections you faced, but you already kind of talked about it. But in most situations, obviously what I'm picking up is it's best to get an agent considering the amount of work they do. If maybe anyone published a book and they just generally ask you that question, in most situations, you want to get an agent. Would that be fair to say, or no?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it really is what your set goals are. If your goal is to get an agent, then go for it. They really are the gatekeepers to those top 5 publishers. But I've had pretty good success with my romance novels with Soulmate Publishing and also self-publishing them. So I'm on 2 very different paths. In my children's writing, I did want an agent, and I have one. And then I self-published the picture books, and then over here I have a pretty consistent publisher on the romance side. And Tasha, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop you. I think I heard you.
Oh, no, yeah. So there's just different things. It kind of depends on what you're looking for and what you're looking to get out of it, and how much work you want to put on which end. And so Donna, if she wants to sell 100,000 copies of her children's book, she has to be out there really herself pushing and pushing and pushing. If you can get into the big 5 publishers, they will often do that for you. But anything below that, you're going to have to work pretty hard. And again, the expectation, there are thousands of books that are printed every year, and not all. So even once you become printed and published, the majority of those don't sell millions of copies. So you do need to be very aware of your expectations. And so it just kind of depends on where your workload is. I have a friend who is making 6 figures off of self-publishing, but that is insane. But she had the money and the clout in the industry already to put herself in front of people who then put her in front of people as a self-published person. So some authors do it because she wanted to do that. She wanted to have them, like, she's not selling as many copies as she would need to sell if she were to do to make 6 figures. So making 6 figures at a traditional publishing route and making 6 figures as a self-pub, you have to sell more books as a traditional published author, because you get so much less per book, or you have the potential to get so much less. So it really, no one can tell you what's the best way to do it.
Okay.
The people in the industry are going to tell you to do the industry. I mean, that's, you know, I have another friend who is a very, very successful romance writer, and she has been writing for, I don't know, 20, 30 years, Shelley Bates, and she started as a traditional published author. She wanted to publish a book. No one wanted it. She wanted to publish it anyway, decided to go self-pub with it, then fell in love with self-publishing. But she already had the audience. And so she's doing really well as a self-pub, and she just took her audience with her. And one of the things that she talks about, though, is you have to, as a self-pub, you're doing all the different hats.
Right.
But she has control over it, and she loves it. So, I mean, it's just kind of where you want to go with that.
No, yeah.
We should probably... Oh, yeah, of course. We should move through the slides.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, though. That was very informative.
Okay, so this is the biggest thing. As a new author, please, please, please never pay for your agent. Their payment comes from them selling your book. That's what happens with it. That's where they get paid. You should not be paying them to represent you. You guys are a team, but it's your story, right? But that's where they get their money, is them getting you a book, them getting you your contract. Please, 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 please never pay for an agent to represent you. Okay, querying publishers. Do your homework. The same principles that apply for querying a agent apply for querying a publisher. You still want to do your homework. You want to see who is going to publish your genre. If you do historical women's fiction, you probably are not going to send that to someone who only does hardcore sci-fi or hardcore anything. And so you just want to make sure you're sending your story to the people who are going to want to look at it. Do they even accept unagented manuscripts? It doesn't cost you any money to send it to them, but you don't want to send it to someone who's going to ignore your story or get annoyed with your with the way you did something, right? You want your time to be really important.
Right. And don't ever pay a publisher to publish your book. And that's one of the things Tasha mentioned. I don't know if it was in this session or the one before. I think it was this one. Self-publishing used to have a bad name, and self-published authors used to be looked down upon, like, oh, you couldn't get published traditionally, so you had to go this route. And because we did have to pay a publisher back in the day to see our book on the shelves, and it's not just a little bit, it's like a good wad of cash, a couple thousands of dollars. And you know, the second you start Googling like how to publish my book, all these ads pop up on all these people, all these publishers who claim to be the best in the industry, who want to publish your book, but they want you to do the bulk of the financial lifting, and they'll still get profit off of your book, and you will have basically paid for all of the work to be done. So that, unless you want to go that route, which I don't recommend, you should not be paying a publisher to publish that book for you.
And this goes back to having your community, because as these publishers get caught, the pay for publishing people, as they get caught, their names get spread among the writing community, and so you know to look out for them.
Right, for sure. And now we're going to talk a little bit about self-publishing, which I do the Harley Farley books as self-published, and my romance novel, The Melody of Us, is also self-published. There are a lot of benefits that come with that. Number one, you completely eliminate the waiting time between you and your editor, or you and the publisher, because you are all of those hats, right? You are that person for all of it. So the benefits are that you're in control, okay, of your sales, of when you release it, changing the price, anything like that. For example, you can also do things like donate to charities, give out free books to schools, fundraisers, things like that. You don't have to wait for decisions on that. You just do that. Again, price control. Seeing your sales is huge because it can help you, look at trends and things like that. When did you have the most sales? What was going on at that time? And you have access to that. If you don't self-publish, you kind of have to ask or wait for those answers to come to you. I publish through Amazon KDP, and we have an Author Central page where I can actually see my ratings, see how many books I sold. I can hold free giveaways and see how many free copies I've given away. You choose your publishing schedule, you choose your royalty rates, and of course your paydays are more frequent. But it also comes with a lot of responsibilities that would be covered by the traditional end. And those include, of course, you doing the writing, any designing and editing and marketing, or hiring for those things if you have the money. Some writers have a small budget that they have to work with, and otherwise, if you don't have a budget, you just kind of have to, do your best through all of that. And what I mean by that is, if you want to hire a freelance editor, you have to pay for that. Any kind of Facebook or Twitter marketing, getting on into a magazine, that's also all on you. Product that you want to purchase, for example, like Harley Farley t-shirts, or your book, your physical book, so that you can sell it at conferences, etc. Paying for the illustrator also comes out of your pocket. Hiring a developmental editor for help. The cover design. There are so many apps that you can use to do it yourself, but again, I've never personally been able to achieve what I've paid somebody who knows how to do it, to do for me. And then, of course, there's the distribution, right? And readers they're amazing, and they are very picky. They will not tolerate your work that's unedited, messy, underproduced. They will call you out on your reviews. You'll build a reputation for that. So you don't want to just be like, wow, I wrote this book. It's like 20 pages, but I know they'll pay $6 for it. I didn't, edit it. I don't have a book cover, but hopefully just the synopsis will sell on its own. I'm just going to put it on Amazon. It really doesn't work that way anymore. And that's why self-publishing has really started to make a name for itself, and people are making tons of money on it now. So the trend has really changed in that aspect. All right. And again, please do not pay a self-publishing platform money to publish your book, because there are so many out there where you can just do it yourself. Some of the top self-publishing platforms are Kindle Direct Publishing through Amazon, which is what I use. I do have friends who use the others, such as Smashwords, which is one of the largest distributors, they say, worldwide. You have Nook, which is publishing your books through Barnes & Noble. You have iBooks Author, BookBaby, Lulu, and Kobo. And basically, you just want to take the time to Google these sites and just look at their pros and cons, read reviews, what people like about it, what they don't. You can even look at some of the books on these platforms and maybe reach out to some authors and say, hey, do you like this? Do you not like this? What do you use to publish your book? And writers, for the most part, are pretty friendly and open to helping other writers. That's what I love about community, but you've got to find that community in order to make that work for you. Where did I go? Okay. And finally, we have Twitter, which has really made a name for itself as one of the most useful platforms in connecting with other authors, number one, to build your community, and number two, connecting with publishers and agents and writer resources. If you don't have a Twitter account, you don't necessarily have to open one to enjoy like reading on things, but if you want to become an interactive member of that community, you should definitely have a Twitter account. And I find that that's what many agents and publishers look for, is your Twitter handle, to go see what you're doing and how active you are on Twitter. Tasha?
Can you go ahead and go to the next slide? So there are some really important hashtags you can use. And these are just an example of some that can help you get your name out there, and just some common writer hashtags.
Oh, this is me. I'm so sorry. So manuscript wish list is what agents and publishers use as a hashtag to let you know what they're looking for. So you can even turn in, do a search in the search engine with that along with your genre, and you'll find specific targeted agents who are asking for those specific kinds of things. So MSWL is very useful. Romance hashtag is useful. PB for picture book, MG for middle grade, SFF for science fiction fantasy, just fantasy by itself. Own voices, which is for marginalized voices, and literary fiction. So you could do a hashtag of MSWL along with these subgenres or genres and find those agents looking for your work. These are the common community hashtags. Writing community. Ask agent is sometimes where you can actually ask an agent a question, or if they're running a session, they'll use that hashtag. You have pub tip, write tip, writer tip, author life, am writing, and on the porch are all the writer hashtags that help you connect with the writing community on Twitter. We did talk about contests earlier. DV Pit, which is for own voices or marginalized authors and illustrators only. It happens once a year in October. Latinx Pitch is brand new. It's just starting out, but it's already done some powerful work within the writing community. They held the first pitch in September 2020 for Latinx creators. PitMad is how I was able to connect with my agent. And it's open to all writers, but they just recently added the hashtag Black Voices Matter. And then that happens quarterly. And then Pitch Wars, which is a huge contest, they just opened their submission window. And basically it's a mentoring program where you send in your pitch, the mentors pick the writer they want to work with, and then you spend some time revising your book to the best it can be. And then the last part of the contest is a showcase where you get your own little web page, so to say, and agents go read that and they comment in the comment section if they want to read more. And of course, all you do is do your elevator pitch, as Tasha mentioned, and then you would put, when the contest is going on that day, all day long, you have to follow the rules, but you would just put that hashtag at the end of your elevator pitch so that agents and publishers can find it during the day.
So we don't really have time to go through all of these, but just so you know, as you're going out there, every single, or the majority of the most famous authors out there were rejected over and over again. I think this first one is probably the biggest, and that was J.K. Rowling with her Philosopher's Stone. She received 12 publishing rejections in a row because they didn't believe that her story was good enough. And then, we all know how that turned out. Dr. Seuss, The Chicken Soup for a Soul, Stephanie Meyer's Twilight, all of them were initially rejected multiple times before they finally got out there and sold like mad cakes. So we'll just, there we go. All right, so this is our contact information. Donna and I are happy to be part of your little community, and cheer you on. And so if you have any questions, please reach out and we're happy to hear from you. Sorry we went over a little bit.
I'm so sorry. It was just really fun. And so much information.
I know, right? There's so much. We could have done like a whole, this is what my grad school was. We just went over things like this. So are there any questions before they kick us out of the meeting? Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We are experts, but we're also always wanting to learn. So if there are things that we got wrong, we're sorry. Things change so fast in the industry as well as so slowly. And so the best thing for you to do is just do your research. Thank you.
Beautiful presentation. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you much, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Please remind everyone to sign in.
Oh yes, please sign in. You can go to, let's see, I don't have it in front of, let me see, I wrote it down. It is HTTP something. I don't have it anymore. Oh, there it is. Yay. All right. You can sign in at this website. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Hold
And
on.
just remember, you have to do this within 3 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, man.
Don't take it off yet.